Okay, so this session, as you know, has been recorded. We've just hopefully enjoyed the video from Tessa West, The Problem of Being Too Nice at Work. We're now going to discuss its relevance to dispute resolution in general and mediation in particular with the aid of our panel. Once they've made their comments, we'll bring in the rest of you for questions and comments. So please remain on mute. You can open up your cameras if you want. I'm going to introduce our first person. I'm going to come up here, and she is Ilona Kuplik. She left her home country of Germany with her family in 2011 to live in the southwest of France. In 2016, they lived in Ireland for a year, where she discovered her love for our island and its people. Since 2019, she's been on the panel of mediators of Family Mediation NI, Belfast, and an MII registered international elder mediator. She's also CEDAR accredited and a member of the Association of European Mediators in Paris. Ilona, we always start more or less with the first question that we have, which is give us one big point or lesson that you took from the video, and how might that takeaway contained therein be used by mediators?
I'm just trying to unmute me here. Hello. I think the first thing which came into my mind was when she said, do we have to be honest? Or can't we be honest when we have to be nice? Or can we be nice and honest? And I think honesty is something which is very important in mediation, but it's very difficult to achieve from the participants. And I think the longer you see them in different sessions, and the more they have confidence in you, in the process, and in themselves, and versus each other, I think honesty goes up, and they are not, or hopefully, so most not always all the time, but in most it goes up because they are less afraid of each other, because they see that if the process works for them, that they see, okay, this is a different scenario here, this is a different atmosphere when we're sitting here with the mediator, and they're behaving automatically a bit different with each other. But this creates this honesty, and that's what I'm always trying to find, this confidence, which is for me honesty, the confidence to say things like they really have to be for them to agree on something. So that's one thing which resonated with me.
Yeah, well, look, I'll stick with you for a minute, Ilona, just because the process of mediation allows for honesty, right? You've got a confidentiality agreement around there, and you're allowed.
Yeah.
And certainly the way I put it is say, look, the reason for that confidentiality is allow you to be honest, knowing that whatever's said can't be used in a different process. You know, if it's already in the grievance, you can't use it. And I think that emphasis on honesty is really important, because if they don't say it, the person that you think has made a mistake or has harmed in some way, it may have been done inadvertently. They know nothing about it. And so you've got to tell people, this is how you hurt me, I think. Is that the kind of thing that you're getting at?
Yes, exactly. So that's, I think it's, like I don't say that I have a favorite in the principles of mediations, but confidentiality is definitely one which I really point out, because I never stop saying this is, I try to create a safe space between us. And when I see that it doesn't work in the safe space of the three of us, or the 4 or 5 of us, whoever is sitting with me in the mediation, then I go into caucus. Then I try to, when I get this feeling of, okay, there is something, and they don't really, like what she said, these clues of not looking at each other, looking down, putting the chair back to get some more distance, etc. So then I think, then it's the moment where I have to take them in another room, and making sure that they are feeling okay, that they're confident in the process, or do they have any other issue coming up, or if there's something they want to tell me but not the others, and then we can discuss it. If they then want to convey it via me, or they really want to say it only to me. But sometimes this helps as well, because it does not has to be necessarily to be said in the joint session. Sometimes it just helps the people to get this confidence back, to go into the room and to discuss other things, maybe with the ex-partner or the family member, if they have already said it to me, just to voice it once. So that's,
Okay, yeah, that's good. So I'm going to bring in Avril. Avril Sheridan
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
is a former litigation solicitor, 22 years experience, who has seen the light and is now a full-time lawyer with particular expertise in the area of separating couples. Separating couples being renowned for telling the truth to one another, right enough. With a focus on client-centric solutions, Avril is proud to offer her expertise navigating complex family dynamics. Her background equips her to guide you through the intricacies of conflict resolution, ensuring a swift and effective path forward. Last month indeed, Avril was named the most professional mediator in South Dublin by the EU Business News Irish Enterprise Awards. So there you go. So you're a star guest today, then, Avril. Ilona chatted about the need for honesty and how that impacts and I suppose builds trust, and trust allows honesty, and more honesty allows more trust. And so, what did you take from the video? Is it one thing, or do you want to build on anything that Ilona said?
I took from the video is it kind of defined what I often feel in the room, and that is the anxious, the anxious niceness. And you're worried about particular words might be triggers, and you're stepping around people. But what I hadn't really taken on board is it's the transfer to the clients. And I only just kind of became conscious of that recently. And then I had started working on ways of trying to ensure that there isn't a transfer. And the only way I've done it so far is by asking people, as we're, within the mediation, well, how is this working for everybody here? Is there anything we can do to improve things going forward? I haven't done it on caucuses because I think it's kind of too risky. I think you kind of need to get an openness. So that's the way I have approached it. But it's a problem I have felt. There is no doubt about it. And we are by nature trying to be too nice. I think particularly Irish people, it's kind of maybe a character flaw. We're not as direct as a lot of maybe nationalities, but be it a character flaw or whatever, we have to be able to control it, to try and get the best out of it, best out of the whole session for the clients and ourselves, so that's really what I took out of it. But it's not easy. It's not easy.
Transfer of anxiousness. I'll bring in.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
We'll bring in Bob. Bob Creehey is an MII council member in charge of governance, or he was. Following a career in corporate and project recovery roles, Bob Creehey now practices as a mediator and dispute negotiator. Bob is both CEDAR and MII accredited and has been assisting clients resolve contractual performance and technical disputes in the major programme and project management space for the last 20 plus years. He acts primarily in commercial, workplace, family, and civil sectors with a focus on small and medium enterprises, family owned businesses, partnerships, and individuals. Bob, we've had transfer of anxiousness, we've had the need for honesty. You can add to those or bring in something else that you want to raise from the video of Tessa West.
Oh, there's almost nothing left after my esteemed colleagues have begun. But I'm indebted to Avril for bringing in the concept of transference, because that transference, and indeed counter transference, because we're all in this together, and everyone in that room is trying to find their feet. They're trying to find a foundation. They're trying to find a baseline. They're trying to find safety. So of course you throw feedback into that, and yeah, adding fuel to flames is a real risk. But the speaker, I thought she said one thing that really stuck with me, and that was, if you're giving feedback, make sure you are aligned with their goals. And that really landed quite hard with me. If you're giving feedback, make sure you're aligned with their goals.
Yeah.
And I'd like to expand on that either now or later, but that
No, expand. If I'm right, I'm thinking that how can you express to somebody something that's going to be helpful for them?
Yeah.
It's that kind of concept, is it? No, go ahead, go now, go now.
No, I absolutely, because if I think, and I don't want this to sound pejorative about our clients, but if our clients had had the experience of constructive feedback and criticism over the years in a consistent way that was done from a position of love, support, honor, trust, respect, then, you know, being blunt, they probably wouldn't be with us. So whereas, and actually, I'm going to throw something in, which is there simply a vacuum of feedback? There certainly isn't a vacuum of opinion and positioning and polarity, but is there? Because, you know, a mentor of mine many years ago said, you know, when you're pointing your finger at someone, remember that there are three fingers pointing back. So, and in this context, I would say that, you know, we as mediators, indeed as human beings, had that responsibility, because we go back to what we were discussing in our preparation today, which goes back to one of our earlier TED Talks, is you control what you say. I'd question that in my case, but you mainly control what you say. You never control how it lands. And my word is that not important when you're delivering feedback? You have to be very careful. And of course, and I'll throw it open and then be quiet. Is feedback in the mediation space? You know, where's the opportunity for that? Because actually, you know, we could be on quite shaky ground there.
Yeah, I suppose you can try and influence how it lands. In your case, you were chatting about how you can make it positive in the interests of the recipient,
Yeah.
but quite often, particularly at the beginning of the joint session and in the one-to-ones before you've had them, the opinions, this vacuum of feedback, but not of opinions, those are intended to hurt. They intend to hit someone. And if you want to try and turn it around, the feedback that we're giving somebody, yes, you've hurt me, this is how, or this is how it might, if we're going forward, how we might work a bit better is very important. I'm absolutely getting that. I've got a question. I'm going to go back to you, Lorna. I'm going to take the question from Jane, if I can read this all the way down. I think it can be challenging for parties to share their own feelings whilst considering how it will land. I have found that helping parties co-create an approach for the sharing can empower the parties to both share and hear safely. So I don't know if you've helped the parties co-create an approach for this sharing, but if you have, then come in, Alona, and then we'll come back to Jane, and I'll see you up there with your hand up, so no problem. I'll come back to you next.
Yes, absolutely. Co-sharing. I think it's important. What I when I just heard the question, I thought of one particular couple I had a couple of years ago, and they sometimes they stick in your memories. So most of the time, I just not forget. So of course, they are important people, but you try not to think about them as they're not thinking of you about you all the time. But they were working so well together that I just thought, oh my God, why are they separating? You know? So they came up really with a lot of good things, and it was just rushing through. And I just said, oh no, slow down, slow down, slow down, because it went too well, actually. And it was actually me who had to ask some challenging question, because I thought, no, otherwise we will have agreement in an hour. And I really had to draw them back and had to question again a couple of tough things. And I announced them as saying, listen, I know this might sound challenging, but it's not meant in a bad way. So, but I saw their faces, like their eyes, because they were not prepared for this. They were not prepared, me asking them questions, because they came well prepared into the mediation. And obviously they knew how mediation worked, or they had a read up, or I don't know, but they knew exactly what I wanted to ask, how the normal questions. And I just, no, we have to take this completely apart. And I asked them these questions, and they have been very difficult for them. I saw them sweating, all these responses she was describing, putting really, like, they were very close to each other first, and then they were a meter more apart. But actually, while doing these questioning, the first time they looked at each other, because they did not know the answer for the question. of each other. And beforehand, when they were saying, okay, we can do it like this and this and this and this, they were only talking with me, but not with them. And when I asked them these questions, and I was kind of afraid to, but then I said, okay, well, I prepared them. Said, okay, it is difficult. I know that. Then they turned to each other and they really had to look at each other to see, okay, so we have to rethink this. Is this working? Is this not working? So what do I want? What do I need? What support do I need? And things like this. And I was afraid, but I was very happy with the work and with their work. And they came out of the session a bit shaky, I guess, because it was definitely a turn they haven't anticipated. But it made them work to cooperate again. So as they didn't cooperate as a couple because they split housework and finance and kids and sport activities and cultural activities. Really, they did nothing together anymore, but all really in put into place, and it worked perfectly for them. But they needed this mediation to see, okay, how do we put it in place, really like a reality check, actually, to put it into an agreement. And so it helped them to consider other things which they haven't thought about, and it was brilliant, yeah. But it doesn't, I would not never say this always works. And really, it's on the spot, in the moment, you have to have this kind of feeling, okay, what can I do? What can't I do? How do I have to get them to work together or not? So
And that kind of
great question.
picks up on Avril's point there about the confidence and setting expectations and anxiousness switching, but you had to have the bravery to allow them to be
Yeah.
brave with one another and to create a better foundation, I think, to have a stronger a stronger settlement, if you like, in the end. So they had a transactional thing and it worked okay, so long as they don't shake it, but it might collapse. Just before I bring you back in, Avril, can I bring in Jane, because you asked the question, Jane.
Yeah.
Do you want to come in here and comment on this, and then I'll come back to you, Avril?
Yeah, brilliant.
I guess I just the work that I do also is mostly in businesses and organizations, but I find that sometimes people, they know what they feel, but they don't know how to share it. They don't know how to be honest, but with also being compassionate. So that's the challenge, right? Is like first knowing what they're feeling, right? And then knowing how to say it in a way that the other person will be able to hear it without being defensive. And that's really hard. And I find that sometimes somebody made a point that if they had a long years of experience giving and receiving feedback in a productive, respectful way, they might not be here, right? They may not be sitting in front of a mediator or a consultant. So I would say that one thing that I do is I say, do we want to come up with some sort of a structure for sharing? It's really important to share what your feelings are and figuring out how that lands. Do you want to come up with some way to do that? I mean, there's I statements, there's lots of different kind of ways to do that, but I find that it empowers the parties to both be, to use your word, brave, honest and compassionate, kind of all at once. And it takes a bit of an adjustment. But I found that to be at least helpful in my practice.
It almost, the way you're describing it, makes me think it depersonalizes it as well. It makes us a problem to be resolved that could have been applied to anyone. It just happens to be them.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Jane. We'll come to Alison, and then I'll come back to McGuig. Okay, Alison. Not Alison. Alison, I got the wrong one. Avril. Avril. Alison's hiding there somewhere in the background. Avril,
Yes. Yeah, I think perhaps one of the ways of doing it would be to and we kind of probably do it naturally in the mediations, where you're finding something that seems to be too agreeable that isn't going to be sustainable long term. And I think we can come across people like that. It's like they're trying to please the mediator and show how good they are. They both do their homework and they're both the best students or whatever. But I think the only way that we can deal with something like that is by kind of suggesting alternatives. Well, I see how you say it, but would something else work better? Would X, Y, and Z work better? Would that work better? Now tell me how you feel about it. But you have to throw in the alternatives, because you're not really testing what they've come to agree with. And that can be a dangerous game, because it can fall apart within weeks, and that's the last thing you want. Them having gone through such difficulty and so much effort, for it to fall apart is the killer. Yeah. So
That's the importance of reality testing, I suppose.
it is, exactly. Yeah, it's a nicer way of putting the reality testing. Yes.
Okay. Before I bring in McGick, Bob, do you want to comment on Jane's question, or that whole area of, I suppose, creating a team scenario or co-design?
Yeah, apologies, Jen. I'm going to shamelessly steal that idea that you've thrown out there, which is, we quite often, and Alona will be familiar with this approach in the work that we both do for family mediation and I, when you're encouraging clients to agree ground rules at their initial session, you can quite often be deafened by the silence, because a couple of things happen. No one wants to go first, or they don't actually know what you mean, which is perfectly understandable. So actually just saying to them, look, during these sessions, things will be said, and things will happen. And do we want to understand how we might respond to those? Because we want to be as honest as possible, but we want to be human and humane. So actually, thank you, Jane. I'm gonna work around that, and rather than just say, what ground rules would you like, and then writing them up on the flipboard, actually say, look, here's the nature of what's about to happen. Here's what it may look like, and do you want to agree now how you respond to those? So do we take a deep breath? Do we because we always say about not talking over each other. That doesn't tend to last very long. And so thank you for that.
Thank you very much. We had another member online. McGuy is all I've got, so it could be McGuigan. You had your hand up earlier. I don't know, do you want to ask a question?
No, I'm fine. Thanks very much, folks. I just pressed the button there by accident. Happy enough listening to all the professionals talking.
There you go. We're all professionals here, with the possible exception of me. Anyway, here's another question that I've got, maybe, and we'll go back to, I think it's the turn of Ilona. Tessa West, and whose video we've just watched there on the dangers of being too nice and giving nice feedback. She referred to one of her students wanting tough questions, and how Tessa then noticed that lack of toughness came across to the student as lazy feedback. And could you give us some thoughts you have on the need to consider, again, going back to some of the stuff Bob was chatting about earlier, the perception of the recipient on what you say and how it might come across in an unintended way? You'd think about how that statement might land as you think about it there. And I suppose how important that might be in mediation for both parties and the mediator, and how you might help them minimize what they say. So we'll look at this co-design, which is fine, but how maybe you can prep them with that expectations that you were chatting about earlier by saying, look, if you're talking to one another, is there another way that can be expressed? Is that an area you would be safe or comfortable even discussing?
Yeah, I would, I don't know if I do it. Maybe I probably do it all the time, but I always say that when I start the session, I thank them that they are there, and I say to them something that that they are very courageous, going to mediation, because I don't tell them that I was a lawyer, but that I'm doing. But what I do is that I came to mediation because I like that the problem stays with them.
Mhm.
So they are here with their problem, but it's not mine; it's there, and that's the reason why they have probably a solution for the problem, but not me. And but I also push it towards them in a nice way. Obviously, I try to be not to be shocking at the start, but I say something like, this is a possibility to put everything on the table you would like to talk about. So what is it? And what are the main things? And then they probably one starts, okay, I want to talk about this and this and this. And the part of the rules is, which I will lay out, that they have to agree on the topics they want to talk about. Only because someone comes with the problem A does not necessarily mean that they will talk about A. because they have to agree first on it. And when they have the topic list, I congratulate them kind of and say, well, I don't know if you already see, but you have agreed on things, so which is really nice. So I think it's again, it's to create this feeling for, can you go in baby steps, what she said, or do you have to go in big steps? And you know, like baby steps can be like congratulate them that they're just there, that they showed up for the problem, and to make them aware that this is not what many people do actually, and this shifts often a bit the atmosphere in the room, and even on Zoom it works, and again, honesty, I think that's it. You know, like, and I say that, you know, this is challenging, this is tough, it is work, and it's not only like, okay, I say yes or no to something, because I will probably ask tough questions, and I will ask, okay, does it fit to you? Is this fitted? So the reality checking if we can this work for you? Is this something, can you pick up your child at 16:05 every afternoon, or should it be 16:10? So, and if you can't because somebody's getting sick, how can you deal with it? How can you let the other parent know about this? So it is it's always coming back to checking if they are realizing what they put themselves through with one or the other decision or agreement, or say, okay, no, I can deal with the finances, you can do this and this. So I always try to engage them both, because obviously what you said, Bob, they are there because they haven't worked well together. And we can't think that I don't have a magic thing that they're going out of the mediation, they're working well together. So it has to be a structured approach, like you said, Jane, something that they have on their hand, or Avery, maybe you said it, something they go away from it and say, okay, listen, I have now something nearly like homework. I have to do this and I have to take care of this. They have to get something to get away with in their hand, in their pocket, and this is the structure then for next time. I always say, well, in 2 weeks I will see you again. And when they say, no, I only have time in 6 weeks, and they say, no, sorry about that, but it has to be in 2 or maximum of 3 weeks, because otherwise it doesn't work for me. The momentum is gone otherwise. No? So for the time we have them in mediation, we have to do everything that they're working together, and this is something. But that's their thing, not mine. So mine is a process. And if they don't stick with this idea, they have to do the work, then it doesn't, probably mediation is not working for them either.
Okay. I'll maybe bring in Avril this time, get your name right. Avril. Ilona's there chatting about, I suppose, some kind of structure, some kind of thing. I often use the Thomas Kuhlman model, and I use a graphic of it. And I'll do it in the one-to-one, the pre-meeting, and show them.
Okay.
And I'll say, like, you know, you've got the accommodating in the top right-hand corner. And I'll say, I know who you are in this, but you're not in the accommodating, or
That's
sorry, in
interesting,
the collaborating section up there. You might be in the accommodating, right enough, some of them are. You're not in the collaborating space. Wherever you are, you're not in collaborating space, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And that kind of ties in with what Bob is saying there about their inability to communicate with one another. They've lost the ability to feedback if they indeed ever have it. So, Avril, do you use anything to shift the thinking there? Any kind of model or metaphor? We've raised metaphors in these things before. Is there anything that you find particularly handy? I'll go to Avril.
Well, I think what I do is, you know, anytime they make progress, like the email comes out, you've made such fantastic progress. This is what you have agreed, and this is what we're going to discuss. I always tell them they're great, because they are great. They're doing what I wouldn't be able to do. I don't think I'd be able to be going to a mediation. I think I'd be scared going into one. And I would disagree with what you you know, asking really tough questions. I don't think we can ask really tough questions. I think we've just got to take a very stepped approach, because they are moving in and out of different emotional phases. So we've got to be in tune with where they are, and we can't ask very difficult, tough questions at times.
So it depends on the time then. Depends on the
It's a
time.
timing. Yeah,
Okay,
I think it's
we've talked
timing.
about timing, we've talked about one-to-ones, we've talked about managing expectation,
Yeah.
we've talked about some models. Bob, can I bring you in here because you're a great one for AI and lots of other things that might work and so on. I use coaching models and get people using Lipit Noster and all kinds of stuff to say this is how you manage change. Is there anything in particular you think might be handy in the feedback sphere, looking and I suppose going back to Tessa West's model, which is a kind of SWOT diagram or um, whatever on how to give feedback from direct and indirect, specific if you like, and so on. Is there anything you particularly find handy?
Sure, but I think we have to be careful because the space that we're in, the opportunity for feedback is actually quite limited.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said that, so obviously the most valuable feedback that we can give to ourselves is reflective practice. So, and we reflect all the time. But this is a lonely old gig. There's only, by and large, you and the parties who know what happened in the room, or the arc. And let's talk about the arc of the engagement, be it an all-day session, a half-day session, or 4 or 5 individual sessions. But the feedback that is most valuable to me is in the room, and it's dynamic, and it's happening all the time. Sometimes clients will be extremely direct. One client who was extremely instructional and helpful to me was because being with my counselling practice, I would do a lot of restating and summarising. But you need to be very careful when you do that, because I did what I thought was a marvelous summary and restating. And one of the clients looked across and she said, that's an excellent summary of his position. I just would have much preferred it to come out of his mouth.
Yeah.
And that for me was quite important because I thought I'd done an excellent job in this summary. And indeed, apparently I had. But was it my position to be doing so? And what I'd done by doing that was I'd done all the right things, but I had alienated one of the parties in the room by providing that, because my summarizing a restatement, was I implicitly supporting a client by effectively articulating his argument in an extremely articulate way, apparently, only to the offense of the other party.
Yeah.
So that dynamic feedback. So I think we should always be open to dynamic feedback, and it's there, and of course we can give it. And then there's the other bit where clients, particularly in individual caucus, will simply, how am I doing? Do you think how am I getting on? And there, I think, and I throw this open, I think, because certainly how I handle that is I deflect. And I deflect by simply saying, could you just remind me what your objectives are? So what outcomes do you want? And then I would ask perhaps an additional a follow-on question to that. How do you feel the other party is responding to your requests? Because I think it's beholden upon us that feedback, particularly in individual caucus, because you may feel you're safe, but who's safe? Are you safe? Are you doing this for your safety? Because of course their safety, and to Alona's point is, the courage that it takes for these parties to be there, and we need to reinforce that. So feedback in the mediation space, tread carefully.
Tread carefully, and I'll bring back Alona here. So Bob's suggesting that we give feedback carefully. Avril's chatted about bringing out options, but again, you have to make sure that they're their decisions, and we're not planting too much. Our job is not to fix, our job is to help them fix different things. So there are other areas about feedback that would be useful if we're looking at this whole area of feedback here. Is there anything else that you think would be particularly helpful, or anything that you might use that would be helpful in there?
Yeah, because what we haven't talked about is we're giving them feedback. We want to move that they're moving forward as well. So we have to be careful, we have to protect them, we have to protect us, we have to be mindful, we have to be everything, but we want them to move forward and going away from the session by saying, that was helpful. And not by us telling them what would be helpful, because we are mediators, but by them finding out via our questioning what might be helpful for them. So when you think about it, it's a very difficult job, isn't it? No? So, but I think I take what you said, Avril, and I would not, if I would be in trouble, I would not go in mediation as a participant either. So I think because you have to have this courage, and it is really important to tell them that at the start, and it puts them into a really mindset that you acknowledging that they're here for a reason, but acknowledging also that they're doing really something positive, and that I'm hopefully being helpful for them. But to move forward, yes, and moving forward, that's what you said, Avril, as well. We have to pick them up, or we have to take them, or we have to take the situation where they are. But not in the way that we are too nice. So it is dangerous sometimes saying things, but if I reflect with their words and I use their words without changing them very much or putting emphasis on this or that, just sometimes asking the same question again, like they asked the other person, just via me as a mediator, via a third person in the room helps them. And I think what's really important, and I never do this, well, I do it enough, but we can't do it not enough, is summarizing, like saying again what they said. Because when we say it, it's via a different person, even though I try to use their words. It is, once this confidence in the mediator and in the process is established, then if the same words, the same sentence, the same question from one participant comes via me to the other participant, gives it a different emphasis. It is just like that. And I think that's what the beauty and the spirit of mediation actually is for me, that that it is via us. And that's the transformative thing in mediation, that even though it's the same word with ABC and the alphabet, it comes across differently because it gives maybe importance, or just that they can listen to it differently. And we have to be careful not to put it into a different sort of thing that they could think we are no longer impartial or neutral. But really to re-say it again, what they said, even though maybe sometimes you think that was not really the right way, and to rephrase it in a certain neutral way. I think rephrasing is something we should all be considering more and more and more. That, that's the bit part for me, which is very difficult, and I had to find out how to do it better. So that was obviously a skill I had, kind of, but not good enough. So I'm constantly working really on the skill to rephrase bitter words, rephrase difficult messages, but to say them still as they were meant, at least, no? So, and not to be afraid not to say them.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. We can summarize well as neutralizing inflammatory language. Certainly we can. Avril, a couple of last words from you. I would usually with people, if I'm summarizing or reframing or whatever, just apologize and say, have I got that right? Have I, I'm in the wrong ball. Am I completely off beam here? I'd do Colombo, right? I go Colombo.
Yeah.
Any last words from you about the video or today or anything you've heard or anything you want to say?
I think rephrasing can be very helpful on moving people forward. I do think that's a critical skill, and we don't actually really learn that in our mediation training, but we learn it from moving people when they're moving from their, positions, moving into their interests, and you're getting into the mid-ground here, and that's where I think rephrasing comes in. I don't think we were ever taught it in mediation training. I don't think so, anyway.
Right, okay. I see George has just asked the Thomas Kilman, Kilmnn matrix is, you just stick it in Google, you'll find a graphic. I actually use mine. I don't have one handy, but I actually got mine laminated. I used them in the joint session, haven't shown them online with the one-to-ones. I turn up with the whole system and on the back. So you remember that thing? It's on the back there. And so
Yeah.
where do you think you are now? I kind of, I find I've been finding those kind of coaching and management things because I work in workplace really useful. So
Yes. Yeah.
I find them helpful for the parties because some of them, particularly the directors and whatever, they get concepts and it helps them
Yes.
personalize and go, okay, this is a problem I need to fix. Just happens to be them that's got it right. So we can send that on. Bob, any last thoughts, and then we're going to finish.
I just think just 3 words. Like if you're going to provide feedback ever, be precise, be succinct, and be humane.
And that was succinctly put. Well done, Bob. Well done to everybody. Thank you for coming along. Thanks, Jane and others for the questions. We'll see you next time. We haven't actually set a date, but we will do. And we'll send that all out to you. And we'll see you at the end of June sometime. Okay, so thanks very much, everybody. Thanks, Alison. Thanks, Alona. Thanks, Avril. Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.